Hi everyone, we are going to go over the writing process. We will be using this throughout the year, especially since we're going to start writing this week. So, how many steps are in the writing process? Hopefully, you know already. We're going to focus on five. All right. This is step one. Step one is pre writing. I'm sure that all of you know about pre writing, but not many of you like to use it. So, as you can see, it's your step that deals with organization and planning. You need to do this before you actually write. I know that other teachers have given you graphic organizers in the past, and I will be doing the same. However, I do want you to get used to creating your own graphic organizers, your own way to pre write. So, what are some things that you can do when you pre write? Well, you can sketch, diagram, free write, list, map. You can even make a web. The point is that you want to pre write. You want to write something. If you just sit down and just start writing, you're just going to have a lot of random ideas and they're not going to be organized. You may think that it's a waste of time, but it truly isn't, because if you think about everything that you want to write before you write it, it will help you have a more organized essay. All right, so these are some examples of graphic organizers. These are a little complicated and a little more detailed. Yours do not have to be this detailed. They could literally be a simple list. All right, this is step two, drafting. Um, this is your first copy. And I know a lot of you have also had teachers that have told you you always want to make a messy copy, a rough copy, your first copy. So I'm always going to recommend that you do that as well. But we're going to do ours a little differently, because once you organize what you want to write, you're going to write it. Okay. In this draft, you do want to include a thesis statement, because that is going to be what's going to um, guide your entire essay. So it does say here that a thesis statement is a short statement. It's usually only one sentence, and it summarizes the main point of the essay, basically what you're going to cover in the essay. In this particular draft, you do not need to worry about spelling. That's why it's a first draft. You're going to be able to go back and make changes and make edits. And that's absolutely important for you to always do. All right. Step three and step four, I think, are always interchangeable. Some people like to call it editing first. Some people like to call it revising. I just want you to know that it is interchangeable. I'm not sure how you guys learned it, but we're going to say editing first, okay? And basically, editing is making sense of what you're writing, okay? So you're going to, once you're done with your first draft, you're going to read through it, obviously. And at that point, you're going to pick out if there's any information that confuses the reader because it makes no sense or it has nothing to do with the topic. You're going to think about the question whether or not you're missing something. You're going to look at the rubric that you are most likely going to get and say, did I include everything that the rubric asked me to include? And this is also going to be where you're going to start checking for spelling, for grammar, for punctuation, for all of that stuff. This is the editing stage. Revising is now going back and making all of those changes that you said you were going to make. So not only is it finding those things that you have to find, but it's also making the changes. All right. So you should be doing this revising whenever you do any writing, whether it's on a test, whether it's in an email, and definitely when you're writing an essay. The last step is publishing, okay? Publishing is when you are double checking to make sure you have the right heading, that it's in proper MLA format, that you have the right header on the paper, which includes your name, the teacher's names, the class period, and the date, all in MLA format, and that goes in the left upper corner. Okay, you have a title if I asked you to write a title, and at this point, your publishing step is when you're handing in your best work. You've really gone through, you've made all the corrections, you've capitalized everything, all of your paragraphs are indented, it's double spaced, all of those little details. Okay. All right, so we mentioned that we are going to be writing in MLA format, okay? This will literally be me. I will always tell you, you know that needs to be an MLA format, right? So these are a few of the characteristics of MLA format. Your font always needs to be in size 12. I don't want it in size 14. I don't want it in size 16. Maybe you used to do that in middle school. I have 20/20 vision, so you do not need to make it large. And even if I didn't have 20/20 vision, I could zoom the screen in, so I do not need you to change the font size. You need to have 1-inch margins around the entire paper. You usually don't have to worry about this because it already makes it for you. Double spaced, I will show you how to do that when I am back in class, and it is just one simple key on Google Docs. Those of you who already know which key I'm talking about, awesome. It does need to be in Times New Roman. So you'll notice that when you're writing anything on Google Docs, it automatically changes the font to Calibri or Arial. Well, I need you to make sure that you always highlight everything and that you change the font to Times New Roman. Okay? In your upper left corner, is this particular heading that I told you. You need to have your name, teacher or teachers' names. So obviously in some of our classes we have two teachers, so you still need to put both teachers' names, okay? I want you to make sure that you write English 1 because that's our class, and then you need to follow it by putting the period that you're in, okay? Whether it's 7, 8, 9, and then you need to put the date. We've already talked about this, but some of you are still putting the date the normal way. It needs to be an MLA format. And in MLA format, you put the day followed by the month, followed by the year. There are no commas, there's nothing else, okay? You need to make sure that you put that. And it's usually the date that it's due. So you're not going to write the date that you started it, rather, you're going to put the date that the assignment is due. All right, titling your paper. Okay, when you title your paper, do you think that it needs to look like this, where the writing process, this is my title, the writing process, is it right underneath my heading? Do you put it right in the middle? Or do you put it right in the middle and you bold and caps locks? I know that a lot of you probably like to do it one way. So choose which one you want. Is it A? Is it B? Or is it C? Okay. A is right underneath the header. B is in the middle, just plain text. C is in the middle, bolded and caps locks. Well, the choice is not the first one because it should not be right underneath your header and it should not be italicized. Not the last one because even though it should be centered, it should not be bolded and it should not be in all capital letters. So your correct option is B. All right, it is the one right in the middle where it is centered with no caps locks, with no bolding. It is just a plain, simple phrase. Okay, so what are the 5 parts of a paragraph essay? You have an introduction, you have 3 body paragraphs, and you have a conclusion. That is when you're writing a 5-paragraph essay. Okay, so it's always 5, 5, 5, 5. It could be more, like when we write our research paper, it will be more. It could also be less, like if you're doing a standardized test, like Park, and you're running out of time and you only have time for 4 or 3 paragraphs, then that will be different, okay? But you should always aim to do 5 at least. All right, so your introduction. What goes in your introduction? You are going to need a hook, all right? Your hook is also known as your attention grabber. So, what is going to grab the attention of your reader? Okay, so these are different hooks that you can use: dialogue, quote, rhetorical question, fact, shock treatment, right? And there's probably other attention grabbers that you've used, like maybe you've used onomatopoeia where you started with bang, um, or maybe you've used a little scenario, well, that would be like the dialogue, or maybe you use a strong statement. Okay, that's that shock treatment. A lot of you have probably always used the rhetorical question, that question that basically doesn't get answered by anyone, but you ask, like, have you ever, decided to use cell phones in class? Do you think that? Okay, awesome. I'm glad that you used it before, but in high school, you're never, ever, ever going to use this again. Okay? Unless a teacher specifies it, which they might. In English class, you are never going to start off with a rhetorical question because, number one, I get really tired of reading like a bajillion essays that start off with a question. And number two, it is elementary. We've talked about this several times that there's a lot of things that maybe you did in middle school and elementary school that you're just not really going to do in high school because nobody wants to keep reading a question every time they write an essay. Okay? So, um, you're going to never ever do this in high school again, right? As I mentioned in your introduction earlier, you're going to have a thesis statement. This is your main idea and your focus. This is sometimes a really hard sentence to write, but once you figure it out, it is super awesome. You need to include the three main points that you're going to address in your essay and that you're going to mention in your body paragraphs, okay? This is usually the sentence that tells us what side you're on, what it is you're trying to prove, um, certain details about the characters that if that's what the paper's on, what you're trying to analyze. This is that one main sentence. It's super important, okay? So your thesis statement is the declaration, as I mentioned. It's what you're going to prove in your paper. All right. If you notice, this is basically what your introduction looks like. You start off with your hook. It's very general. Then you go into more specific things, more details like about the text, about the articles you're using, about the topic that we're writing about. And then you go into more specific, which is getting to the point, and that's where you have your thesis. All right. Your thesis statement is your opinion. So it is saying, like, I think that gun control regulation needs to be stronger in the United States. Sure, it's definitely your opinion. But as I've mentioned before, in high school, you will not be PPing on your essay, okay? Which means you will not be using any personal pronouns. So at no point during your essay should I see the words I, you, me, we, us, our, okay? You do not want to use those. You can use the words they, he, him, she, her, but you are not going to use I think, I believe, my opinion is. You're just going to say it, right? Or else you will be getting diapers or depends of some sort because you will be peeing on your essay, and that's embarrassing because you're in high school. All right, so here's an example. The question that they're giving for the prompt is, should scientists give all cows the formula to produce only chocolate milk? So your thesis would say, scientists should or should not give all cows the formula to produce chocolate milk. All right, that is a thesis, but it's a little um, mediocre. It's too simple. It's just not strong enough. So you want to make your thesis stronger, right? And you make your thesis stronger by adding your three things. Your three things are usually your three reasons, your three examples, your three whatever, all in one sentence. So you'll notice that my sentence is a little bit bigger now. Scientists should not give cows the formula to produce chocolate milk because it will harm the cow. Be pricey for consumers, and not all people like chocolate milk, nor do they want it every day. That's a perfectly good sentence. It's lengthier, but you will notice that it includes the three reasons. So if I want to prove that scientists should not give cows the formula to chocolate milk, you'll notice that my first reason is it will harm the cow. My second reason is it will be pricey for consumers. And my third reason is not all people like chocolate milk, nor do they want it every day. All right. So traditionally, a thesis statement, a good one at least, will be at the end of your introduction, usually your last sentence, okay? Sometimes it'll be like second to last, but it will never, ever, ever, ever be the first sentence because you already know that your first sentence is your thesis. I'm sorry, your first sentence is your hook. So you need to make sure that your thesis is later on, okay? You're not going to tell everybody everything as soon as they read the first sentence of your essay. Okay. So when you are writing your thesis, you do want to envision the sentence saying, I believe that, because that's usually how you guys are used to thinking. But you're not going to use those words, I believe. You're just going to say it. Okay. All right. So here's an example prompt. Okay. When you look at a prompt, you need to make sure you read the prompt and figure out what it is that you're being asked to do. Um, Usually, if there's a response to literature, it's telling you to discuss the value. You need to read carefully and identify little details about what the prompt is asking you for. So now we are moving to the Jane Schaefer writing strategy. I don't know how many of you have used this before, but this is how you will be writing an effective body paragraph, okay? So you already know your introduction. Now we're moving on to your three main body paragraphs. Those are the paragraphs that include your examples or your reasons for proving whatever you're going to prove. This is how you're going to write them. All right. So to write an effective Schaefer paragraph, you need to have colors. We're not going to actually have highlighters. You guys are going to color code eventually on your essays. But we are going to label our topic sentences blue. We're going to label our concluding sentences blue. Our concrete details are going to be in yellow. And our commentary sentences are going to be in pink. Okay? I know some of you already kind of know this, but when we look at a paragraph, just a body paragraph, you start off with a topic sentence at the top of your sandwich bun, okay? It is the first sentence of the paragraph, okay? It's going to introduce the main idea or the main point of that paragraph. Basically, it's like, what am I going to read about in that paragraph? Okay? I should be able to, when I read your first sentence, pick out what your reason is or what example you're going to be talking about in that paragraph. You should consider using a transition word. All right, we are going to do a lesson on transition words in the future, but you should consider using a transition word. So here's an example topic sentence. In the fairy tale, The Three Little Pigs, the third pig is very wise. Okay, so here I am. I'm starting with a transition phrase in the fairy tale. I know that I'm dealing with the three little pigs, and I know that this paragraph is going to be about the third pig being very wise. Then we move on to our concrete details. Most of you should know that our concrete details are our textual evidence, the support that we're getting from the story. So that's the meat of our hamburger, okay? So they're going to support your topic sentence. It's going to basically help you prove whatever it is you want to prove in that paragraph, okay? It's going to be textual evidence. And you should probably use a transition word to introduce it, okay? Concrete details, you can't argue them because they are a fact. Literally, if I said, Eccles in The Sound of Thunder um, does not shoot the dinosaur, okay? We know that that is a concrete detail. That is a fact that comes straight from the story. I can't argue it, okay? Concrete details can be an exact quote, okay? It can be a direct quote. We've talked about this already. A direct quote is a quote that is word for word and needs quotation marks around it. Or it can be an indirect quote where you're mentioning something from the story or from the essay and you're putting it in your own words. Regardless, you're still going to need to cite where you got both of them from. All right, here's your example of a concrete detail. For example, remembering his mother's warning about a wolf, the third pig builds his house out of sturdy brick. Okay, so if I was using a book and it literally had this exact sentence, you'll notice that this is in quotation marks, which probably means that I got it from somewhere. This particular example, I didn't put an in-text citation in it, but I should have, okay? Next step is commentary. Commentary, okay? That is going to be like the extras that you put in the hamburger, all right? Here's the deal. You can never just have a fact or a textual evidence from the story without commenting on it. All right. So once you give me the fact, which is always going to come before the commentary, then you got to talk to me about it. Okay. This is what's going to make your hamburger more delicious. This is what's going to make it more interesting. Okay. So when you do your commentary, you're analyzing, you're interpreting, you're explaining, you're giving some more insight, you're showing the reader that you understand what you're talking about, okay? So for this, you're going to have two commentary sentences. You're always going to have two. It's going to be one concrete detail, two commentary sentences. So the wolf is unable to blow down the brick house. This shows that the third pig is smarter than his brothers, who were both eaten by the wolf. So there I am giving some kind of explanation or analysis about the third pig being wise and making his house out of bricks. Okay? So, my usual suggestion is that your first sentence explains the quote. So, basically tells me what is happening in the story when you chose that quote. And then my next sentence is explaining how this particular quote proves whatever it is that you were proving, okay? Like this one here, this shows that the third pig is smarter than his brothers, who were both eaten by the wolf. It shows that the pig is wise, okay? So that's how I'm explaining that. Right, and then your last sentence is your concluding sentence. Every paragraph needs a concluding sentence. That's the bottom of your bun, okay? All right, this one wraps up the paragraph. It rephrases maybe what you said in the first sentence, and you're usually starting it with a concluding transition so that the reader knows that you are ending your paragraph, okay? We will do more of this so that you understand how to practice it, okay? So here's my example. In conclusion, the third pig outsmarts not only his brothers, but the big bad wolf as well. All right? Okay, so now what? All right. As I mentioned, we are going to be using a certain ratio of concrete details and commentary, right? So I want you to know that when we say one chunk, we mean one concrete detail, two commentary. If I say two chunk, that means I want two concrete details. And for each concrete detail, you need two commentary sentences. So that one would look differently. So this is my ratio. 1 to 2 means one concrete detail, two commentary sentences. Okay? See, one concrete detail, two commentary sentences. That is your one chunk. So here's my example from the Three Little Pigs. Okay? I gave my concrete detail about the sturdy brick house, and then there's my two commentary sentences. You see how that's in pink. Transition words, okay? As I mentioned before, you need to make sure you have some transition words, the words and phrases that will help your readers understand your ideas a little bit more. So here's some examples, but we are going to make sure that we go over more of those in the future, okay? So now that you know how to write your one chunk, you want to make sure that it flows and that everything kind of moves in the direction that it should. We are going to be writing two chunk paragraphs normally, just so that you know, okay? Here is step 6. Here is you looking at the whole entire paragraph. So you see that my topic sentence and my closing sentence are both in blue. My concrete details in yellow, and my two commentary sentences are in pink. Okay. So basically, what is that saying? That a paragraph for you should roughly be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences, right? Isn't that what you've always learned? When we do two chunks, however, that might mean that your sentences are going to be that your paragraphs are going to be 8 sentences long. So get used to it. It will be happening, right? These are some more transition words. We will be looking at this eventually. Maybe you have used some of these. We will go over how to use them because transition words are used differently for different purposes. Okay, the conclusion of your essay. This is the final paragraph in your essay. Okay, basically, as you know, and I'm sure you've heard before, the conclusion needs to echo your introduction. What is it that you are saying in your introduction? You want to kind of restate it again in your conclusion. You are going to start, and I know a lot of you have a hard time starting a conclusion. Your easiest way to start a conclusion is to begin with your thesis statement, which is the last sentence in your introduction. So go back to your introduction, look at your last sentence, which should be your thesis, and then go to your conclusion, rewrite that sentence, but use different words. So if you said, the third pig is wise because he makes his house out of bricks, then you're not going to say it the same way in the last paragraph. You're going to say, um, because he used a stronger material, the third pig proved his superiority over his brothers, or something like that. Okay. And then you're going to mention again the 3 points that you went over. And then you're going to end with something that's thought provoking. Okay. I will go over this a little bit more in detail in person, but something that's thought provoking is something that's going to leave your reader thinking. Okay. Some strong statement. It's almost like a hook, but at the end. And that's it. I think that's all I have for you guys. Okay. So make sure you complete this Edpuzzle and that you understand all of these parts because we are going to be reviewing them again, and that your Edpuzzle counts as a quiz. Thanks. Bye. Have a